Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following. Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less. MainSource Bank, headquartered in Greensburg, Indiana, offering products and services to fit every stage of life. More information at MainSourceBank.com. MainSource, life needs a great bank. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Smithville Communications, serving Southern Indiana with high-speed fiber gigabit internet. Smithville Fiber Gigabit Technology. Tap the power.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk, the battle over whether Hoosiers should be allowed to hunt deer over high-fenced preserves for sport has been going on for years.
It's bad business, it's not ethical, it needs to just go away.
Ahead, we go to the center of the controversy and explain why the fight is coming to head now. 1 in 4 Indiana children struggles with hunger.
So imagine sitting in the classroom and trying to focus on something that an adult is teaching you about math or about language arts or literacy or any of those things, and yet you're hungry.
The impact hunger is having in the classroom, and the creative approaches some districts are trying to keep kids from going hungry when school's not in session. Those stories and the latest on this week's headlines.
911, do you have an emergency?
Right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Hello, I'm Joe Hren and welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. State lawmakers are once again considering whether to crack down on captive deer hunting. The controversial sport allows people to hunt farm-raised deer in a fenced-in area. Legislators recently tried to pass a bill that would place more restrictions on Indiana's 4 hunting preserves, but it failed. Now a study committee is looking into whether laws should be changed or if the preserves should be shut down. As Barbara Harrington reports, it's sparking a heated debate between wildlife advocates and the high-grossing, high-fenced hunting industry.
Come on, Rella.
On a sunny afternoon, there's no place Jim Statz would rather be.
I got into deer farming about 5 years ago because of my passion and my care for animals.
Tailor-made whitetail spans several acres on Bloomington's west side, where Statz keeps more than a dozen doe and 3 treasured bucks.
This is the original breeder buck for the farm, Zeus.
Statz sells his stock to be used for breeding, but many deer farms across the state make a large portion of their money by selling to hunting preserves. But that could change.
It'll shut down these family farms.
And then in 2000, that was when
a legislative study committee that met for the first time this week is exploring whether hunting preserves should face tougher regulations or be shut down altogether. At the center of the controversy is a deadly disease that's spreading rapidly in neighboring states called chronic wasting disease, or CWD. It attacks deer and elk nervous systems, causing brain lesions, and scientists haven't discovered a treatment.
The biggest problem is there's no live test for it. No way to determine until the animal dies. And by then it's too late. It could have infected many, many other deer.
Allman says the Indiana Deer Hunters Association wants to see hunting preserves shut down. They think importing deer from other states to the businesses puts Indiana at higher risk for chronic wasting disease.
It's being spread from most likely on trucks. I mean, you don't leapfrog certain states and end up, 3 states away we have chronic wasting disease in both pen and outside the fence.
According to the U.S. Geological Survey's National Wildlife Health Center, wasting disease has been found in both captive and wild deer. When that happens, states try to kill the herd that the infected deer came into contact with to prevent the disease from spreading. But even then, it can have a devastating impact.
There's no cure for it. Once you get it into a state, you have it. The animals that are on the soil, they contaminate the soil. That disease vector stays there forever. You can never use that soil again.
Opponents of high-fenced hunting say the captive deer industry perpetuates the problem and therefore needs to be shut down or more heavily regulated. But North American Deer Farmer Association Executive Director Sean Schaefer says farmers are spending thousands of dollars to try and keep chronic wasting disease out of the state. Every deer that comes to a hunting preserve is tested, while only a small portion of wild deer are tested.
I think as long as the legislatures look at all the facts and look at the science, because the science does stand behind us on this, and that's why it is such a successful industry across America. As long as they look at the science, I think we'll be okay on this. I think they'll keep and put good regulations, science-based regulations in place.
Whatever the legislature decides likely won't impact Jim's stats. He's giving up his deer farm to move back west. But he's worried about what it could mean for his friends in the business.
If they start regulating, the deer farmer, as myself, that is the hunting preserves are our farmers market. We're losing a lot of revenue in the state of Indiana, not only in revenue in the hunting, but revenue of hunters coming in, the motels, the food, everything. I mean, it's a huge, huge impact on this industry.
It's really old for a white-tailed deer.
The study committee will meet again before making recommendations to the legislature later this year. Legislators are expected to take the issue up during the 2015 session. For more on this story, and the newest member of our news team, reporter Barbara Harrington, joins us. So how exactly does the chronic wasting disease make its way into Indiana? Because you just reported in the story that about deer preserves, but so far, at least in Indiana, it's not here, and there are deer preserves.
Right, so there are so many different ways, Joe, that this could potentially make its way into a state. And what's so tricky about combating this disease is scientists don't exactly know how it gets into a state. They're not sure exactly how the disease is transmitted. Now, they do have several different theories. They think that deer-to-deer contact may be the most likely way that deers are catching this disease. But there are also worries about potentially it being transmitted through the soil, hay being carried across state lines, vegetables, and that makes it very scary that they don't know exactly why. And that's why we've seen so many states throughout the country consider banning the import of deer, live deer, going into these deer preserves or these farms. They're also concerned, though, about deer carcasses. If someone were to leave the state, go on a hunting trip, and then bring that back to go to a taxidermist, that could potentially carry the disease. They just don't know.
But the disease isn't the sole reason why people don't want the deer gaming farms.
That's exactly right. You know, it's a big reason. It could be a huge threat to the state's deer population, but opponents to this, the Indiana Wildlife Federation and even the Indiana Deer Hunters Association, they think that hunting these animals in these preserves, these fenced-in areas, is unethical. They think it's a bad representation of the sport. They kind of equate it to shooting fish in a barrel. So that's another reason.
Thank you very much, Barbara. And now, for more on this week's top stories, we go to Alex Dirkman.
Thank you, Joe. Purdue University student accused of killing a classmate is awaiting sentencing after pleading guilty to murder this week. Police say 23-year-old Cody Cousins shot and stabbed 21-year-old Andrew Bolt on Purdue's West Lafayette campus in January. Cousins has been in jail since after the attack. His attorney has said he'll pursue an insanity defense. The judge will consider Cousins' mental state during sentencing September 19th. Indiana is extending Amtrak's contract to continue operations on its passenger rail line from Indianapolis to Chicago. The previous contract, which ran through October, was considered a temporary fix after congressional funding for the line ran out. INDOT officials say the new extension through the end of January will allow them to continue negotiations with companies interested in taking over the line. It's the state and the communities surrounding the line that are taking on the cost, paying nearly $233,000 per month to operate it. On top of improving its finances, INDOT officials say improvements to the line's amenities, including food and Wi-Fi, should be implemented by the time the contract runs out. The Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission is scheduled next month to present its findings of a new report that shows Indiana's energy efficiency program was effective. The Energizing Indiana program provides rebates and other incentives for individuals and businesses to reduce their electricity consumption. The report shows a savings of about $3 in electricity costs for every $1 spent on the program. But Senator Jim Merritt authored a bill earlier this year that eliminates the program.
Let me just say, energy efficiency should be a part of our lives from now on. And I believe in it, but I think you need to be smart about it. and you can find ways that aren't expensive for the ratepayer that make sense.
Environmental groups, on the other hand, say the new report shows the program is effective and needs to be restored.
There was a tremendous amount of private sector investment going on throughout Indiana. Thousands of jobs have been created, so we're hopeful that the General Assembly recognizes the value and the benefit of these programs to the state of Indiana.
The committee that's considering the report next month is expected to provide its recommendations to the full legislature next year. The Indiana Department of Education plans to apply for a federal grant that would help make high-quality preschool available for all children in the state. If Indiana is selected, it could get $250 million to establish a universal preschool program. State Superintendent Glenda Ritz says the focus will be quality preschools.
Wherever you send your child, it should be of quality. There shouldn't be a big disparity between programs in which children attend.
Ritz also said a successful early learning infrastructure would include a kindergarten assessment and stronger partnerships with other state agencies. A bill that lawmakers will introduce this session would enhance consumer protections for active duty military service members. The proposal allows military members who've been deployed to suspend or postpone debt collections, foreclosures, evictions, and other obligations that include cell phone or cable contracts.
The men and women who wear the uniform, who serve our country, deserve the best that we can give them when they are not at their homes with their families. And this measure goes a long way to help ensure that then the families who are left behind are not preyed upon.
The Attorney General says he expects the bill to receive broad bipartisan support. The new Bloomington Transit Center is up and running, and although its completion is a few months behind schedule, the center's general manager says he thinks it was worth the wait. Outside the building are bike racks and benches, and the new facility is air-conditioned with more seating, restrooms, and vending machines. And the Transit Center is also home to a new 911 dispatch center. Operators and emergency managers relocated to the second floor of the center last week.
Communications manager Jeff Schemmer says talks about a new dispatch center started 27 years ago.
Previously, we had 5 consoles that we worked out of, and we've expanded to 9. And one of the nicest feature of that is when we get extremely busy during severe weather or things like that, now I actually have room to bring in extra people to man.
Because the building was built from the ground up as a communications center, Schemmer says everything from the acoustics to the workstations are better for employees.
911, do you have an emergency?
The project was completed a few months behind schedule. Mayor Mark Cruzan says that's because the original proposal was only for a 1-story transit center building.
We require private developers to build up to have 2 or 3 stories downtown, and here was a government building that was going to be just 1 story, so that some equity issues.
The building's total cost, including land, design, and construction, was about $9.5 million. Most of that came from federal funding and Bloomington Transit.
And Indiana's first female Supreme Court Chief Justice began her tenure this week.
In the United States.
Loretta Rush replaces outgoing Chief Justice Brent Dixon. Rush says she's proud to be the state's first female Chief Justice, saying it's important to promote diversity within the legal profession. And Justice Dixon will remain on the court until his mandatory retirement in 2016 due to his age.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Yes. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. An appeals court is hearing Indiana's same-sex marriage case next week. We'll talk to a legal expert about what to expect and how it could impact same-sex couples. Instead of having the kids come to the lunchroom, one school district brings the lunchroom to the kids. But it's not just for fun. School officials say the food bus aims to keep low-income children on track with their academics. And you've probably seen the videos of people pouring ice on their heads. It's for a good cause, and the Ice Bucket Challenge has made its way right here to Indiana Newsdesk. Find out how, coming up next.
We believe in the excitement of exploration, that life offers each of us adventures that are ours for the taking. We believe that children are born explorers, who need trusted guides on their journeys of discovery. We believe in breaking new ground and in challenging assumptions. That important questions deserve to be explored deeply, fairly, and honestly. And we believe that who you are and where you come from should never stand in the way of what you want to be. This is who we are. This is what we believe. This is PBS.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. On Tuesday next week, the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals is scheduled to hear arguments for and against Indiana's same-sex marriage ban. A judge ruled earlier this year that Indiana's law is unconstitutional, causing hundreds of couples to hurry to the courthouse to get married. The appeals court has since put a hold on that ruling, and the appeal is the next step in a process that many say will end with the U.S. Supreme Court. To talk more about what we can expect from next week's hearing, we're joined by Deborah Whitus. She's an associate professor at the Indiana University Maurer School of Law. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, at the appeals court, Indiana's lawsuits are being combined with cases from Wisconsin.
Right.
Now, does that change anything for Indiana?
Not really. The arguments on both sides in both states are pretty similar.
And what argument should we expect to hear from both sides?
Well, I think that the plaintiffs will be talking, that is the same-sex couples, will be talking about why they want to get married and why it's unfair that they can't get married. And the states will be trying to justify the bans on marriage, generally focusing on the connection between marriage and procreation.
Now, the appeals court is hearing the arguments on Tuesday. Then what happens after that?
Then the panel, so there'll be 3 judges that hear the argument and ask questions, and then they'll think about what happened at the argument, read the briefs, and write an opinion.
Do we know how long this might take for?
You know, it varies. I think that they've probably been thinking about the arguments already as the briefs have been coming in.
Do you think as time goes on that this will end up with the Supreme Court?
I think it's almost certain that one of these cases, at least, that is the ones bubbling up around the country, will end up at the Supreme Court. Whether it's the one coming out of Indiana and Wisconsin or one of the other ones is hard to say.
Now, what happens if the appeals court rules it unconstitutional?
Well, then the appeals court would also decide whether to put its own ruling on hold. It earlier, as you mentioned, put the trial court judge's ruling on hold. So the appeals court would make that assessment, and then the states could appeal to the Supreme Court if they wanted it put on hold and the appeals court didn't.
Now, the Supreme Court just put a pause on the appeals court ruling that struck down Virginia's same-sex marriage ban. Now, that's the second time the Supreme Court issued a stay. Does that give us any indication of what may happen here?
It seems likely that any decision coming out of the 7th Circuit would also be put on hold while the Supreme Court ultimately decides the issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate
you
being here
me.
today. The new school year is underway for districts across Indiana, and for many students, that means a return to consistent meals through the free and reduced price breakfast and lunch program. It's something a lot of people take for granted, but the reality is thousands of kids in Indiana are labeled as food insecure. A report released this week shows nearly 100,000 children in South and Central Indiana rely on food banks. Recognizing the year-round need, some school districts with large percentages of students who depend on free and reduced price lunches are expanding their programs so students don't go hungry on the weekends, in the evenings, or over the long summer break. Claire McInerney of our State Impact Education team has the story.
Most of the time when we talk about how a student can be successful in school, reading ability, testing strategies, or parental involvement tend to be at the center of the discussion. But just as important is what that child had for breakfast.
So imagine sitting in the classroom and trying to focus on something that an adult is teaching you about math or about language arts or literacy or any of those things, and yet you're hungry.
Butts oversees a school district where 80% of the students rely on free and reduced price breakfast and lunch during the school year. So a few years ago, the district began delivering meals in the summer to students through a federal program.
In the past, we've participated with the summer feedings program, but we've not been able to serve as many sites as we'd like because of some limitations. And one of those limitations was location.
To reach more children during the summer, the district refurbished an old school bus and turned it into a mobile cafeteria, which took to the streets for the first time this summer. The bus traveled to mobile home parks, apartment complexes, and the public library in neighborhoods where a lot of students who depend on free and reduced price lunches live. By the time school started at the beginning of August, they had served an estimated 90,000 meals. The bus looks like a cafeteria on the inside, linoleum floors, large coolers, and fold-down tables and benches so the children can eat on the bus. Loretta Fleming says her kids look forward to the bus's arrival every day.
The kids call it the party bus. The kids love it. They think it's really cool.
Fleming says when she lost her job more than a year ago, her family depended on free and reduced price lunch, and having that available in the summer is invaluable.
It alleviates some of that stress knowing, okay, well, if I don't necessarily have the money to get all the lunch foods that they need for the week, then they're still getting a decent meal in the day because they have the free lunch program here.
Butts says in addition to providing meals during the summer, the mobile cafe also creates a sense of community between students and the school district at a time when students are usually on their own. The next step for MSD of Wayne Township is providing dinner to students who need it. The district's food service team says 3 elementary schools currently participate in the at-risk supper program for kids in the Y After School program, and the district is trying to expand it to high school students.
And Claire, funding from the meal program comes from the federal government.
Correct. So districts like MSD of Wayne Township, where a really high percentage of students rely on free and reduced price meals, qualify for the various programs. So in Wayne Township, they do breakfast and lunch, which a lot of schools do, but they also are looking to expand to dinner, like I said at the end. So kids would have to be enrolled in a sport or after school activity to qualify, but then, you know, some of the students would be getting breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day when they're at school.
And this is just one program. There are many different programs too.
Yeah, so in addition to dinner, they also do a snack where they do a fruit and vegetable, and they were telling me they get to try different things that you might not get at the store. They also bring in different kinds of smoothies or drinks and have kids try them and learn about, you know, why this is healthy, why this isn't healthy, why you should choose this over that. So there's an education component as well when the federal government gives them this money.
And it's like you said in the story, there's that sense of community where other people can come in and do activities that helps the children as well.
Sure. So especially with the bus this summer, a lot more of that was going on. One of the stops was the public library, and so librarians would come out and read to the kids. They told me that they did things like flashcards or worksheets while the kids were eating lunch, and it helped keep them sharp when they might not be reading or doing math every day when they're out of school.
Okay. Well, that bus did look like a lot of fun.
It was a blast. The kids were having so much fun when I was there.
And there's another trend that's been sweeping the country, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Participants dump a bucket of ice water on their head or donate to the ALS Association. Now, many people who accept the challenge actually do both.
Right, and it seems everyone's getting involved ever since the cause has gone viral. President George W. Bush, Colts owner Jim Irsay, PBS President Paula Kerger, and even Kermit the Frog have all taken the challenge. A former colleague of mine did it and then gave me 24 hours to dump ice water on my head. So as I thought about who I wanted to challenge, there were a lot of friends and family members I considered, but I realized the perfect person is someone I sit by every day and who has his own TV show. So, Joe Hren, I nominate you.
Well, I was also nominated by my friend Greg. He came in to watch this, so I can't avoid this, can I?
No, we're going to get in the pool and we're going to dump some water on you.
Okay. So here we go. Okay, this is Aaliyah, and she actually has, thank you, a friend whose dad. Tell me about it.
He died from this, and it was really sad, so I wanted to do this in honor of him.
Okay, so here we go. I get to do this one now. You want to hold that?
I will.
Okay, you ready? All right, here we go. It is cold, isn't it? Okay, and then you have someone that you want to nominate, though.
I want to nominate my teacher, Whitney Koch.
Okay, thank you very much. Claire, are you coming back?
I'm not getting it.
So that was fun. Thank you very much.
You look like you had fun, Joe.
Now, we don't want to forget that the whole point of the challenge is to raise money and awareness for the disease. So we wanted to share what ALS is like for those who suffer from it. It's also known as Lou Gehrig's disease and is a neurodegenerative disease that destroys nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord. That means those who suffer from ALS lose their ability to walk, pick things up, speak, and eventually even breathe.
Yes, so this challenge does seem to be raising a lot of awareness and money to help families whose loved ones are suffering from the disease. The ALS Association reported yesterday it had received just shy of $42 million in donations. That compares to only $2.1 million during the same time period last year, which is a lot of money, so it seems to be working.
Yes, it is. That's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news in southern Indiana throughout the week as I go dry off at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following. Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less. MainSource Bank, headquartered in Greensburg, Indiana, offering products and services to fit every stage of life. More information at MainSourceBank.com. MainSource, life needs a great bank. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Smithville Communications, serving southern Indiana with high-speed fiber gigabit internet. Smithville Fiber Gigabit Technology. Tap the power.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.